The black credit card sat untouched on Amara's nightstand for 3 days, while the other servants of the Hale estate went on shopping sprees that would make royalty blush. Victor Hale watched it all from his study, tracking every purchase with the satisfaction of a scientist whose hypothesis was being proven. Give people unlimited money, and they'll show their true nature, greed. The butler bought a Rolex. The chef ordered diamond-studded knives. The chauffeur booked first-class tickets to Monaco. But the quiet maid who cleaned his mansion and sent every penny home to her sick mother hadn't spent a single cent, and that bothered Victor more than any billion-dollar deal gone wrong. When Amara finally used the card, Victor Hale had accidentally found the one person who was about to teach the billionaire that real wealth had nothing to do with money. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Victor Hale's estate, a sprawling mansion that seemed to breathe wealth from every polished surface. Victor stood at his office window, watching his staff move like clockwork through the gardens below. At 53, he had everything money could buy: private jets, a fleet of luxury cars, estates across 3 continents. Yet the emptiness in his chest felt heavier than any of his possessions. The media loved to paint him as a ruthless titan of industry, and Victor had never bothered to correct them. Let them think what they wanted. His employees whispered different stories, though, tales of unpredictable moods and strange tests of loyalty that kept everyone on edge. Some called him eccentric. Others used less flattering words when they thought no one was listening. "Sir," his aide, Jonathan, knocked softly on the door. "The senior staff have assembled in the main hall, as you requested." Victor turned from the window, straightening his Italian suit jacket. "Good. It's time." The main hall buzzed with nervous energy as Victor entered. His senior staff, 23 in total, stood in a loose semicircle, their faces a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. There was Gregory, the butler who'd served the estate for 15 years, his practiced smile never quite reaching his eyes. Marcus, the head chef, shifted his weight from foot to foot, hands clasped behind his back. David, the chauffeur, maintained his usual air of false modesty, though Victor could see the calculation behind his respectful gaze. "I've called you here for something different," Victor began, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. He reached into his jacket and produced a stack of black credit cards, each one gleaming like obsidian in the morning light. "These are connected to my personal account. No limits." A ripple of shock passed through the group. Gregory's smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place. Marcus's eyes widened, and he unconsciously rubbed his hands together. "Buy whatever you want," Victor continued, walking slowly along the line of staff, handing out cards one by one. "Consider it a bonus, a gift, whatever helps you sleep at night. But know this, I'll know who you really are by the choices you make." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Victor enjoyed watching them squirm, seeing the gears turn in their heads as they tried to decipher the real game being played. Is this some kind of test, Mr. Hale?" asked Susan, one of the housekeepers, her voice barely above a whisper. Victor's lips curved into what might have been a smile on another man's face, but on his, it looked more like a predator baring teeth. "Everything in life is a test, Susan. The only difference is that this time, I'm grading on a curve." As he moved down the line, he came to Amara. She stood near the end, as she always did, trying to blend into the background. Late 20s, with warm brown skin and eyes that held a quiet strength, she was one of the newer additions to his household staff. While others reached eagerly for their cards, Amara hesitated, her hands remaining at her sides. "Take it," Victor said, holding the card out to her. "Sir, I don't think I should. I insist." His tone left no room for argument, though he found himself studying her reaction more closely than the others. There was something different about her hesitation, something that wasn't calculation or fear, but genuine discomfort with the offer itself. Amara's fingers trembled slightly as she accepted the card, holding it as if it might burn her. Victor's gaze lingered on her a moment longer before he moved on. "No limits," he repeated to the group. "Show me your heart." The moment Victor left the hall, the whispers began. "This has to be a trap," Gregory muttered to Marcus. "He'll fire anyone who spends too much. Mark my words." "Or not enough," Marcus countered. "You know how he is with his games." David shook his head. "The trick is to spend just right. Not too greedy, but enough to show appreciation." Amara remained silent, the card feeling impossibly heavy in her pocket. She watched as several of the staff pulled out their phones, already browsing luxury websites. Gregory was looking at watches, his fingers swiping through options that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Marcus had pulled up restaurant equipment catalogs, though she suspected those weren't for the estate's kitchen. By evening, the spending had begun in earnest. Gregory strutted through the servants' quarters wearing a new Rolex, making sure everyone saw it catch the light. Marcus had ordered himself a set of Japanese chef's knives that cost more than a car. David had been more subtle, but Amara had overheard him on the phone booking a first-class trip to Monaco. "What about you, Amara?" Susan asked, genuinely curious. "What are you going to buy?" I haven't decided yet," Amara replied softly. Gregory laughed from across the room. "She'll probably buy soap with that card. Maybe some discount cleaning supplies." The others chuckled, but Amara just lowered her head and continued folding the linens she'd been working on. She'd learned long ago that the best defense against mockery was silence. From his private study, Victor watched the spending in real time on his computer. Each transaction appeared as a line item, telling its own story of greed and desire. The Rolex for Gregory, predictable. Marcus's knives, at least professionally adjacent. David's Monaco trip, trying to appear cultured. But Amara's card remained unused. "Interesting," Victor murmured to Jonathan, who stood nearby with a tablet. "She hasn't spent a penny. Perhaps she's planning something bigger, sir, waiting for the right moment." Victor shook his head slowly. "No, look at her history. Hired 8 months ago. Never a complaint, never a request for advancement or raise. She keeps her head down, does her work, and disappears. She's either the smartest one of them all, or what, sir?" Victor didn't answer, but his eyes remained fixed on Amara's inactive card on the screen. "She'll be the one to watch," he said quietly. As night fell over the estate, Amara sat alone in her small room in the servants' quarters. The black card lay on her nightstand, catching the moonlight through her window. She could hear the other staff members celebrating their purchases, comparing their acquisitions like trophies. She picked up the card, turning it over in her hands. It was heavier than a normal credit card, made of metal rather than plastic. The weight of it seemed to represent everything it could do: pay off her debts, secure her family's future, buy her things she'd only dreamed of. But every time she thought about using it, something held her back. This wasn't her money. It wasn't earned or deserved. It was a test, and she wasn't sure what the right answer was supposed to be. The alarm on Amara's phone buzzed at 4:30 a.m., just as it did every morning. She silenced it quickly, not wanting to wake the other maids who shared the adjacent rooms. In the darkness, she dressed in her uniform, a simple black dress with white trim that the estate required, and pinned her hair back into a neat bun. This was her routine, had been for 8 months now. But before this job at the Hale estate, she'd been juggling 2 positions, cleaning offices at night and working at a grocery store during the day. The estate position paid better than both combined, but it still wasn't enough. It was never enough. She moved through the pre-dawn quiet of the mansion, beginning her duties before the rest of the house stirred. The marble floors needed to be polished before Mr. Hale took his morning walk through the main hall. The silver in the dining room needed checking, even though it had been cleaned yesterday. Perfection was the minimum standard here. As she worked, her mind drifted to the letter folded in her pocket. She'd been carrying it for 3 days now, as if keeping it close might somehow change what it said. Final notice. The landlord was tired of partial payments and promises. Full rent by the end of the week or start packing. Her phone vibrated. A text from her younger brother, Jerome. "Registration deadline is tomorrow. I can defer if you need me to." She typed back quickly. "No, you focus on your studies. I've got it handled." She didn't have it handled. But Jerome was so close to finishing his engineering degree. He was going to be the first in their family to graduate college, and she'd sell her soul before she let him drop out now. The great room's grandfather clock chimed 6 times as other staff members began their day. Amara had already completed half her morning tasks, but she slowed her pace now, careful not to appear too eager or efficient. She learned that standing out in any way, good or bad, was dangerous in houses like this. Still pretending to be invisible. Gregory's voice made her jump. The butler stood in the doorway, already dressed impeccably despite the early hour. "Just doing my job, Mr. Gregory." He snorted. "Your job, right? We all saw how you hesitated yesterday with the card. What's wrong? Afraid to show your true colors?" "I don't know what you mean." "Oh, I think you do." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think you're better than us, don't you? Too pure to want nice things? Or maybe you're playing a longer game. Try to impress the old man with your virtue." Amara kept her eyes down, continuing to dust the mantelpiece. "I just need time to think about it." Gregory laughed, a sound like ice cracking. "Time to think? Sure. Just remember, little girl, in this house, the ones that don't play the game get played themselves." After he left, Amara's hands trembled slightly as she finished her dusting. She hated how small he could make her feel with just a few words. But she had bigger problems than Gregory's disdain. During her lunch break, 20 minutes in the servant's kitchen, she made her daily phone call home. Her mother answered on the third ring, her voice weak but warm. "Amara, baby, you don't need to call every day. I want a mama. How are you feeling?" "Oh, good days and bad days. Today's a good one." Amara could hear the lie in her mother's voice, but didn't challenge it. "Are you taking all your medications?" "When I can." That new prescription the doctor wanted. The pharmacy said insurance won't cover it. "But don't worry about that. The other medicines are working fine." Amara closed her eyes, adding another item to the endless list of things she needed to pay for. "I'll figure something out, Mama. I always do. You were too hard, baby. When's the last time you did something nice for yourself?" "I'm fine, Mama. You just focus on getting better." After the call, Amara sat in the empty kitchen, staring at the black card she'd pulled from her pocket. One swipe could solve everything. Her mother's medications, Jerome's tuition, the rent. Mr. Hale had said no limits. But it wasn't hers. And taking what wasn't hers, even when offered, felt like crossing a line she'd drawn for herself long ago. "Talking to yourself?" Marcus entered the kitchen, his new designer watch gleaming on his wrist. Another purchase from yesterday's spree. "Just thinking," Amara replied. "About what you're going to buy. Let me guess, something practical. Maybe groceries." He laughed at his own joke. "You should live a little, Amara. When's the next time a billionaire going to hand you an unlimited credit card?" After Marcus left, Amara found herself alone again. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her photos. Jerome at his university, looking proud in front of the engineering building. Her mother from last Christmas, before the illness had taken so much of her strength. These were her riches, she reminded herself. These were what mattered. The afternoon brought its usual challenges. Mrs. Wellington, Mr. Hale's estate manager, found fault with how Amara had arranged the guest room linens. One of the junior maids accidentally knocked over a vase while Amara was cleaning nearby, making it look like her fault. The groundskeeper's daughter, Lucy, a bright 8-year-old, had wandered into the servants' area looking for help with her homework. "Miss Amara, can you help me with my fractions?" Lucy asked. Her math textbook clutched her chest. "Of course, sweetheart. Let's sit over here." As Amara patiently explained how to find common denominators, she didn't notice Victor watching from the doorway of his study, which had a view of the servants' courtyard. He observed how she gave the child her complete attention, how she celebrated each small understanding with genuine enthusiasm. "Sir." Jonathan appeared at his elbow. "The Johnson meeting has been moved to 3. Cancel it," Victor said, not taking his eyes off the scene below. "Sir, I said cancel it." Jonathan wisely didn't press further. In all his years of service, he'd never seen Mr. Hale this interested in the household staff's daily activities. As evening approached, the divide between Amara and the other staff who'd received cards became more pronounced. They gathered in clusters, showing off their purchases or planning new ones. David was describing the yacht he'd chartered for his Monaco trip. Susan had bought a designer handbag she'd coveted for years. Even the quiet groundskeeper had purchased a new set of professional tools. "What about you, church mouse?" Gregory called out to Amara as she passed through the common area, still clutching that card like it might disappear. "Leave her alone," Susan said, though not unkindly. "Maybe she's just being careful." "Careful," Gregory scoffed. "That's one word for it. I call it ungrateful." Amara escaped to her room, but their words followed her. Was she being ungrateful? Mr. Hale had given them a gift, and she was the only one not using it. But every time she thought about spending the money, she remembered her grandmother's words. "What comes too easy leaves just as fast." That night, unable to sleep, she sat by her window and watched the moon travel across the sky. The black card sat on her nightstand, a constant reminder of the choice she had to make. Tomorrow, her landlord would want an answer about the rent. Tomorrow, Jerome needed his tuition payment. Tomorrow, her mother would need those medications. She picked up the card, feeling its weight once more. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow she would make a choice that would change everything, though she didn't yet know how much. From his bedroom suite, Victor also found himself unable to sleep. He'd watched the card activity all day, thousands upon thousands spent by his staff on luxury goods, vacations, and indulgences. All except one. "What are you waiting for?" he murmured to the darkness, thinking of the quiet maid who'd helped a child with homework instead of shopping for herself. He designed this test to reveal greed, to confirm his belief that everyone had a price, that loyalty was just a transaction waiting for the right number. But Amara was breaking his rules by not playing at all. Victor walked to his window, looking out at the servants' quarters where a single light still burned. He didn't know what disturbed him more, that she hadn't spent anything, or that he found himself hoping she wouldn't. The next morning arrived with a heavy gray sky that matched Amara's mood. She had made her decision during the sleepless night, and now the black card felt like it was burning a hole in her pocket as she took the bus into the city. She'd told Mrs. Wellington she needed to handle a family emergency, accepting the dock and pay without complaint. But instead of heading to the luxury district where the other staff members had done their shopping, Amara got off the bus in a part of town that hadn't seen renovation money in decades. The streets were cracked, the buildings wore their age like badges of hard-won survival, and the people moved with the kind of purposeful stride that came from having somewhere important to be and not enough time to get there. Her first stop was a pharmacy that looked nothing like the gleaming chains in the wealthy neighborhoods. The windows were covered with handwritten signs advertising discounts on generic medications, and a bell from a 1950s chimed when she pushed open the door. "Can I help you?" The elderly pharmacist looked up from his work, adjusting his thick glasses. "Yes, I need to fill several prescriptions," Amara said, pulling out a list she'd carefully compiled. "And I want to pay for any medications that are being held for people who couldn't afford them." The pharmacist's eyebrows rose. That's very generous. But that could be quite expensive. We have about 12 prescriptions on hold right now." "That's fine," Amara said quietly, sliding the black card across the counter. His eyes widened when he saw the card. Anyone who worked in customer service knew what that particular shade of black meant. Unlimited funds, the kind of card that only the ultra-wealthy carried. He looked from the card to Amara's simple clothes and worn shoes, clearly confused. Are you sure?" "Yes. But please, don't make a fuss about it. Just tell people their medications were covered by an anonymous donor." As the pharmacist began processing the prescriptions, Amara wandered the aisles, filling a basket with basic necessities. Children's vitamins, bandages, over-the-counter pain relievers, the kinds of things she knew people in her neighborhood often went without when money was tight. She added notebooks and pencils, remembering how Jerome had sometimes gone without school supplies when they were younger. "These too," she said, placing the basket on the counter. The pharmacist's hands shook slightly as he rang up the total. "Miss, this is over $3,000. "That's fine," Amara repeated, though her own hands trembled as she signed the receipt. It was more money than she'd ever spent at once in her life. The people who get those medications, they're going to be so grateful. Mrs. Chun has been rationing her heart medication for months, and the Williams family, their son, needs those antibiotics for his asthma. "Please don't tell them it was me," Amara insisted. "It's important that they don't know." She left quickly, before the pharmacist could ask more questions, and walked 6 blocks to her next destination, St. Mary's General Hospital. It was the kind of public hospital that served people who couldn't afford anything better, where the walls needed paint and the equipment was always a generation behind. Amara knew this hospital well. It was where her mother had first been diagnosed, where they'd received the devastating news with kindness, but also with the harsh reality of what treatment would cost. She approached the billing department, a small office tucked away on the first floor where people went to negotiate payment plans they'd never be able to complete. "I want to pay off some overdue accounts," she told the clerk, a middle-aged woman named Patricia who looked like she'd heard every hard luck story twice. "Are these family accounts?" "No. I want to pay for people who are about to be sent to collections. Families with children, if possible." Patricia stared at her. "I'm sorry, what? I know there must be families who owe money they can't pay. People who are avoiding medical care because of existing debt. I want help with that. That's highly unusual. I need to speak with my supervisor." 20 minutes later, Amara sat across from the billing department director, a stern woman named Ms. Howard who kept eyeing the black card Amara had placed on the desk like it might be fake. "You want to pay off random medical debts?" "Why?" "Because I can," Amara said simply. "And because they need it. This is highly irregular. How do I know this card is legitimate?" "Run it for a small amount first. $1. Verify it however you need to." Ms. Howard did exactly that, and when the charge went through instantly, her demeanor changed. "How much are we talking about? How much would it take to clear the accounts of 3 families who are facing collections?" Ms. Howard typed on her computer, pulled up records. "I have a single mother here who owes $8,000 for her daughter's emergency surgery. A family of 4 who owes $12,000 for the father's cancer treatment. And an elderly couple who owes $6,000 for various procedures. $26,000 total, $26,437. I'll pay it all." The room went silent except for the hum of the ancient air conditioning unit. Ms. Howard's fingers hesitated over her keyboard. "Can I ask why you're doing this?" Amara thought of her mother, of the bills piling up, of the weight that never seemed to lift. Because nobody should have to choose between their health and their home. As the transactions processed, Amara could hear commotion in the hallway. Through the office window, she saw a woman crying, clutching a paper while her 2 children hugged her legs. "They just told me my debt was paid," the woman was saying to a nurse. "I don't understand. Who would do that?" Amara slipped out through a side door before anyone could connect her to the payments. She walked quickly through the hospital corridors, past the emergency room where a young mother sat with a feverish infant, past the pharmacy where an elderly man counted coins for his prescription. She wanted to help them all, but she knew that would draw too much attention. Already, she worried she'd done too much, been too visible. Her last stop was a community center she'd passed many times on the bus, but had never entered. It was the kind of place that survived on donations and volunteer work, providing after-school programs for kids whose parents worked multiple jobs. "I'd like to make a donation," she told the director, a cheerful woman named Ms. Rodriguez who wore paint stains on her jeans like medals of honor. "How wonderful. Every little bit helps. I want to buy supplies for the after-school program. Whatever you need." Ms. Rodriguez laughed. "Well, our wish list is pretty long. We need new computers, art supplies, books, sports equipment. Make a list. Everything you need for the next year." The woman's smile faltered. "I'm sorry. Everything. Computers, supplies, books. Whatever would help these kids." 2 hours later, Amara had authorized purchases totaling $43,000. 15 new computers for the learning lab. Art supplies to last through the school year. A library of books for every reading level. Basketball hoops that weren't bent, soccer balls that weren't patched with duct tape. "I don't even know your name," Ms. Rodriguez said, tears streaming down her face. "That's okay. The kids don't need to know who. They just need to know someone cares." As Amara rode the bus back to the estate, she saw several of the families from the hospital. The single mother from the billing office was on her phone, telling someone about the miracle that had happened. An elderly man held his newly filled prescription bag like it was made of gold. None of them knew her. None of them would ever know her. And that's exactly how she wanted it. Back at the estate, Victor sat in his study, watching the card transactions appear on his screen with increasing bewilderment. Pharmacy purchases in a poor neighborhood. Hospital payment department charges. Community center donations. "Sir, you need to see this," Jonathan said, entering with his tablet. "The charges on Ms. Amara's card. I'm looking at them now. The location data shows she's been in the Riverside district all day. That's the poorest area of the city," Victor finished. He pulled up the detailed transactions, frowning at what he saw. She paid off medical debts for people she doesn't even know. "It appears so, sir. The hospital confirmed 3 families had their entire balances cleared." Victor leaned back in his chair, a strange feeling stirring in his chest. Why would she do that? What's her angle? "Perhaps there isn't one, sir. There's always an angle, Jonathan. People don't just give away money to strangers." But even as he said it, Victor found himself doubting his own words. He'd been so certain this test would reveal everyone's greed, their selfishness, their true nature. Instead, Amara had done something he couldn't comprehend. "Should I have her investigated more thoroughly?" Jonathan asked. "Yes. No. I don't know." Victor stood, pacing to the window. What kind of person does this? That evening, dinner at the estate was more tense than usual. The staff who'd received cards were showing off their latest purchases, but there was an undercurrent of unease as they noticed Amara's continued silence about her spending. "So, Amara," Gregory said, loudly enough for everyone to hear, "we're all dying to know what you bought with Mr. Hale's generous gift. Don't keep us in suspense." Amara focused on serving the soup course, her movements precise and careful. "Just some things that were needed." "Things that were needed?" Marcus laughed. "What? Did you buy a lifetime supply of mops?" "Leave her alone," Susan said, though she too looked curious. "Not everyone needs to broadcast their purchases." "Come on," David chimed in. "We're all friends here. I showed you all my Monaco booking." Gregory shown off that Rolex enough times we could draw it from memory. "What's the big secret?" "There's no secret," Amara said quietly. "I just bought some necessities." Gregory's eyes narrowed. "Necessities, right? You know what I think? I think you're playing some kind of game, acting all humble and modest to impress the old man." "That's not." "Then prove it. Show us a receipt. Tell us what you bought." The room fell silent, everyone waiting for Amara's response. She could feel their eyes on her, judging, suspicious, eager for drama. "I bought supplies," she said finally. "Medical supplies, school supplies. Things people needed." The laughter that erupted was immediate and harsh. "Medical supplies?" Gregory wheezed between laughs. "You had an unlimited credit card and you bought bandages? Who buys school supplies with a billionaire's card?" Marcus added, shaking his head. "That's the saddest thing I've ever heard." Amara escaped to the kitchen as soon as she could, their mockery following her. She stood at the sink, hands shaking as she washed dishes that didn't need washing. Unknown to her, Victor had heard everything from his position in the adjacent dining room. He'd been about to enter when the conversation started, and something made him stay hidden, listening. "Jonathan," he said quietly to his aide, who stood beside him. "I want you to verify her story." Discreetly. "Of course, sir." Victor returned to his study, but concentration eluded him. He found himself thinking about Amara's voice when she'd said things people needed. There had been no pride in it, no false modesty seeking praise. Just a simple statement of fact. His phone rang, his lawyer calling about some acquisition he was supposed to care about. But Victor's mind kept drifting to the quiet maid who bought medical supplies instead of jewels. A memory surfaced unbidden. Himself at 25, before the money, before the success. His girlfriend at the time, Sarah, had found his wallet on the street, returned it with all the cash intact. He'd been so suspicious he'd counted the money 3 times, certain she'd taken something. When she hadn't, he'd asked her why. "Because it wasn't mine," she'd said simply. They dated for 2 years. He'd been happy then, genuinely happy in a way he hadn't felt since. But when the money started coming in, when success changed him, she'd left. "You've become someone I don't recognize," she'd said. "Someone who sees the worst in everyone because you can't imagine anyone being better than you are." Victor shook off the memory. That was decades ago. He learned since then that Sarah was naive, that everyone had a price. This maid would prove to be no different. She had to be working an angle he hadn't seen yet. The next morning, he called Amara to his study. She entered nervously, clearly expecting reprimand for yesterday's absence. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. She sat on the very edge, as if ready to flee at any moment. "I'm curious about your purchases yesterday," Victor said, watching her carefully. "Medical supplies, was it?" "Yes, sir. And some school supplies." "For yourself?" "No, sir." "For family, then?" Amara hesitated. "For people who needed them, sir." Victor leaned back, studying her. She met his gaze briefly, then looked away, but not before he caught something in her eyes. Not guilt or deception, but a kind of resigned expectation, as if she was used to not being believed. "You spent over $70,000 on supplies for strangers." Her eyes widened. She hadn't realized he could see the exact amounts. "Ah, yes, sir. I'm sorry if that was too much." "You said no limits, but I understand if—" "I'm not concerned about the amount," Victor interrupted. "I'm curious about the why." Amara was quiet for a long moment. "Have you ever needed medicine you couldn't afford, Mr. Hale?" The question caught him off guard. "No." "Have you ever had to choose between keeping the lights on and buying your child's school supplies?" "No." "Then I don't think I can explain it in a way you'd understand, sir." It wasn't said with any malice or judgment, just a simple statement of fact that somehow cut deeper than any insult could have. Victor dismissed her, but her words echoed in his mind. That afternoon, he did something he hadn't done in years. He drove himself, without David, to the addresses where she'd made her purchases. The pharmacy was first. The elderly pharmacist recognized the black card transaction immediately when Victor inquired. "That young lady is an angel," the man said, not recognizing Victor. "Mrs. Chun came in today for her heart medication. She cried when I told her it was paid for. She's been choosing between food and medicine for months. And you don't know who the woman was who paid?" She insisted on staying anonymous. "But between you and me, she didn't look like someone who had that kind of money. Worn shoes, simple clothes. I thought maybe she was using someone else's card, doing a good deed for an employer maybe." Victor drove to the hospital next. He had to use his influence to get the billing director to speak with him. And even then, Ms. Howard was reluctant to share information. "Patient privacy is paramount," she said stiffly. "I'm not asking for patient information. I'm asking about the woman who paid their bills." "I can't discuss that either." Victor pulled out his checkbook. "What if I wanted to make a similar donation? Say, $100,000 to clear more patient debts?" Ms. Howard's attitude shifted immediately. "Well, that would be incredibly generous, Mr. Hale. Victor Hale." Her eyes widened in recognition. The Victor Hale? But then, the card that woman used. "Was mine, yes. She's an employee. I'm trying to understand what she did here." Ms. Howard relaxed slightly. "She was remarkable, Mr. Hale. She specifically asked for families with children who were facing collections. She didn't want any recognition, refused to give her name. One of the families she helped, the Johnsons, they were about to declare bankruptcy. The father has cancer, and the bills were destroying them. Your employees saved them from losing everything." Victor wrote the check, partly to maintain his cover story, but mostly because something about Amara's actions had shamed him into it. He had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes, and until yesterday, it had never occurred to him to pay off a stranger's medical debt. His last stop was the community center. Ms. Rodriguez practically glowed when she talked about the donation. "The kids are going to be so thrilled," she gushed. "We've been using computers from 2010. Half of them don't even turn on anymore. And the art supplies, we've been rationing crayons." "Crayons? Can you imagine?" "But that woman, she just asked what we needed and bought it all." "Did she say why?" "No, but I could tell she understood these kids. The way she asked about the after-school programs, about homework help. She knew what it was like to need these services." Victor sat in his car afterward, staring at the community center where children were starting to arrive for after-school programs. They ran in with the kind of energy only kids could maintain after a full day of school, backpacks bouncing, voices high with excitement. One little girl dropped her folder, papers scattering across the sidewalk. Before anyone else could react, a teenager helped her gather them up, making sure nothing was lost. Such a small kindness, but it made the little girl smile like she'd been given a gift. Is this what Amara saw? These small moments where help mattered? That evening, Victor found himself in a position he'd never been in before, unsure what to think about someone. He'd built his fortune on reading people, on understanding their motivations and exploiting them. But Amara had done something that didn't fit any pattern he knew. He called Jonathan to his study. What did you find out about her background? She's been supporting her family since she was 16, sir. Mother has lupus, requires expensive treatment. Younger brother is in his final year of engineering school. She's been paying his tuition. She works here and sends most of her salary home. So she could have used that money for her own family? Desperately, sir. I found a notice of eviction in her background check. She's behind on rent. Her mother needs medications they can't afford. The brother's tuition is overdue. Victor felt something shift in his chest, an uncomfortable tightness. But she didn't use it for any of that. Not a penny, sir. Every charge was for strangers. Victor stood at his window, looking out at the servants' quarters where lights were beginning to come on. In one of those small rooms, a woman who couldn't pay her own rent had spent $70,000 on strangers' medical bills. Sir, Jonathan ventured, if I may ask, what was the real purpose of this test? Victor was quiet for a long moment. I wanted to prove that everyone is selfish at heart, that given a chance, people will always choose themselves first. And Ms. Amara? Victor didn't answer, but the truth sat heavy in his chest. She hadn't just passed his test. She'd revealed it for what it was, the cynical game of a man who'd forgotten that genuine goodness could exist. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Gregory, the butler, his face wearing its usual mask of false concern. Sir, I thought you should know. Some of the staff are concerned about Amara's purchases. They think she might be using your kindness to fund some kind of scheme. What kind of scheme? Perhaps she knows these people she's helping. Perhaps she's getting kickback somehow. It just seems suspicious, sir. Nobody is that selfless without an agenda. Victor looked at Gregory, really looked at him. The butler who'd immediately bought himself a Rolex, who was now trying to tear down the one person who'd shown actual kindness. You're right, Gregory, Victor said slowly. Nobody is that selfless without an agenda. Gregory smiled, missing the irony entirely. Exactly, sir. Shall I keep an eye on her? No, I'll handle this personally. After Gregory left, Victor made a decision. He would investigate further, but not through corporate spies or background checks. He would do something he hadn't done in decades. He would actually pay attention to someone besides himself. The days following Victor's investigation passed in a strange tension that seemed to affect the entire estate. Victor found himself doing something he hadn't done in years, actually observing the daily life of his household, particularly one member of it. He watched from his study window as Amara arrived each morning before dawn, always through the servants' entrance, even though the main door would be faster. He noticed how she ate her lunch alone in the garden, sitting on the same worn bench under the oak tree, reading library books with cracked spines. He saw how she stayed late to help other maids finish their work, never asking for credit or recognition. But it was the small moments that unsettled him most. The way she hummed softly while polishing silver. Not the forced cheerfulness of someone trying to appear happy, but genuine contentment despite everything. The way she carefully saved half her dinner roll each night, wrapping it in a napkin. He later learned she gave these to the homeless man who slept near the bus stop. 3 nights after the hospital visit, Victor couldn't sleep. The child from the community center haunted him. Not any specific child, but the idea of them. When had he last thought about children needing crayons? Why had such problems become invisible to him? At 2 in the morning, he found himself walking through the servants' wing, something he'd never done before. The hallway was narrow, the carpet threadbare, the walls needing paint. How had he never noticed the conditions his staff lived in? A thin line of light showed under one door, Amara's. He could hear her voice, soft and strained. I know, Mama. I know it's overdue. I'll figure something out. I always do. No, don't ask Jerome to drop out. Please. He's so close. Yes, Mama. I love you too. Victor retreated quickly, but her words followed him. She could have paid everything with his card. One swipe could have solved all her problems. Instead, she'd given it all to strangers. The next morning, he called Jonathan to his study. Double Amara's salary. Immediately, Jonathan's eyebrows rose slightly. The most emotion Victor had ever seen him display. Of course, sir. May I ask why? No, Victor said curtly, then softened. Just do it, and backdate it 3 months. Sir, that would be a significant sum. I'm aware of what it would be, Jonathan. Just do it. But even as he gave the order, Victor knew it wasn't enough. Money wasn't the point. If it was, she would have used the card for herself. The point was something else, something he was only beginning to understand. That afternoon, he arranged another test, though he told himself it wasn't really a test. He had Jonathan leave an envelope on Amara's cleaning cart with $5,000 cash and a note. For excellent service. VH. He watched through his security system as she found it. She stared at the money for a long moment, then carefully picked it up and walked directly to his study. Mr. Hale? She knocked softly. You left this on my card by mistake. It's not a mistake. It's a bonus. Sir, this is too much. I can't accept this. Your salary has also been increased. You'll see in your next paycheck. Instead of joy or relief, her face showed distress. Sir, did I do something wrong? Are you? Is this because of what I bought with the card? I can pay it back. No, Victor said sharply, then caught himself. Why did the idea of her paying it back anger him so much? No, Amada. This is because you've been an exemplary employee. Nothing more. She left the money on his desk. Thank you, sir, but I'm paid fairly for my work. I don't need extra. After she left, Victor stared at the abandoned envelope. When was the last time someone had refused his money? When was the last time someone had told him they didn't need more? The tensions in the household were becoming impossible to ignore. Gregory had begun a whisper campaign against Amara, suggesting she was manipulating Victor, that her poverty act was just that, an act. Mark my words, Gregory told the gathered staff at dinner, loud enough for Amara to hear from the kitchen. She's playing a long game, acting all noble and selfless. She probably knows those people she helped, probably getting kickback somehow. That doesn't even make sense, Susan protested. How would she get kickbacks from paying medical bills? Maybe she's building a network, Marcus suggested. Future favors. You help someone when they're desperate. They owe you forever. Or maybe, David added with a knowing look, she's trying to seduce the old man, playing on his sympathies. You've all noticed how he watches her now. Amara, listening from the kitchen, felt tears prick her eyes. She'd known this would happen. No good deed went unpunished in places like this. She should have just bought something for herself, something small and forgettable. Now she was a target. That evening, she was carrying a load of fresh linens up the main staircase when Gregory deliberately bumped into her. The sheets went flying, floating down like white ghosts over the banister. How clumsy of you, Gregory said loudly. Really, Amara, you should be more careful. Mr. Hale won't keep you around forever just because you can play act at charity. She knelt to gather the sheets, her face burning. Other staff members passed by, some smirking, others looking away uncomfortably. No one helped. From his study doorway, Victor watched it all. The old him would have enjoyed the drama, seen it as entertainment. But now, watching Amara silently pick up each sheet, maintaining her dignity despite the humiliation, he felt something crack inside his chest. Later that night, unable to focus on work, Victor found himself in a part of the mansion he rarely visited, the library. Not his personal library with its first editions and leather-bound volumes, but the small staff library where employees could borrow books during their breaks. Amara was there, as he'd somehow known she would be. She was tutoring Lucy, the groundskeeper's daughter, both of them bent over a geography textbook. The capital of Montana? Amara was asking. Helena, Lucy said proudly. Perfect. You're going to ace this test. Victor watched from the doorway as they worked through state capitals, Amara patient and encouraging with each answer. When they finished, Lucy hugged her tightly. Miss Amara, why are the other workers mean to you now? Amara's hands stilled on the child's hair. They're not mean, sweetheart. They just don't understand some things. My dad says you're the kindest person here. He says you help people you don't even know. Your dad is very sweet. Is that bad? Helping people you don't know? No, Lucy. It's never bad to help people, even if others don't understand why. After Lucy left, Amara remained seated, her head in her hands. Victor was about to leave when she spoke without looking up. I know you're there, Mr. Hale. He stepped into the room, unsure why he felt like a child caught eavesdropping. How did you know? Your cologne. It's very distinctive. She finally looked up, and he was struck by how tired she looked. Did you need something, sir? I wanted to ask you something. The families you helped, did you know them? No, sir. Then why? Why them, and not your own family? I know about your mother's medical bills, your brother's tuition. Why strangers? Amara was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she said, when I was 15, my father died. We lost our house, everything. We were living in our car. One night, it was so cold, and Jerome was sick. I went into an emergency room, begging them to see him even though we couldn't pay. She paused, lost in the memory. They were going to turn us away. Then this woman, I never learned her name, she was there with her own sick child. She paid for Jerome's treatment, paid for antibiotics, even gave us money for a motel room that night. Well, I tried to thank her. She said something I've never forgotten. What did she say? She said, kindness isn't a loan, it's a gift. Pass it on when you can. So that's what I try to do, Mr. Hale. Pass it on when I can. Victor felt his throat tighten. But you can barely survive yourself. I am surviving. That's more than those families were doing. She stood, smoothing her uniform. If you'll excuse me, sir, I have duties to finish. After she left, Victor remained in the small library, surrounded by worn books and uncomfortable chairs. He thought about kindness as a gift, not a loan. When had he stopped believing in gifts? When had everything become a transaction? His phone buzzed. Another board member calling about another acquisition, another deal, another $1 million that would change nothing in his life. He let it go to voicemail. The following week, the atmosphere in the estate deteriorated further. The staff had clearly divided into camps. Those who believed Amara was manipulating the situation, led by Gregory, and a smaller group who defended her, primarily Susan and the groundskeeper, Robert. Victor watched it all unfold from his position of power, fascinated and disturbed by the dynamics. He'd created this situation with his test, and now it was spiraling beyond his control. She's got him wrapped around her finger, Gregory hissed to Marcus during lunch preparation. Did you see? He doubled her salary. Doubled it. For what? Spending his money on random strangers. Maybe she's smarter than we thought, Marcus replied, chopping vegetables with unnecessary force. Make him feel guilty about his wealth. Position herself as some kind of saint. Next thing you know, she'll be in the will. Over my dead body, Gregory muttered. I've been here 15 years. 15 years of perfect service, and some nobody maid walks in, and suddenly she's the favorite. Their resentment was palpable, poisoning the air of the estate. Amara found her supplies mysteriously moved. Her schedule changed without notice. Her completed work criticized for imaginary flaws. Victor observed it all, and for the first time in his life, felt guilty about something he'd set in motion. His test had been meant to expose human nature, but all it had revealed was his own cynicism and the ugliness it bred in others. During a board meeting he was supposedly chairing, Victor found his attention drifting. The CFO was droning on about quarterly projections, but Victor was thinking about Amara's words, kindness as a gift, not a loan. Mr. Hale? Mr. Hale. He snapped back to attention. What? The Morrison acquisition. Should we proceed? I need more time to consider it. The board members exchanged glances. Victor Hale never needed more time. He made decisions instantly, ruthlessly. Something was off. After the meeting, his oldest board member, James Patterson, pulled him aside. Victor, is everything all right? You seem distracted lately. I'm fine, James. Is it health-related? You should tell us if. I said I'm fine. Victor snapped, then caught himself. I'm just reevaluating some things. James studied him carefully. In all the years I've known you, Victor, You've never reevaluated anything. You decide, you act, you move on. What's changed? Victor didn't answer because he didn't know how to explain that a maid making minimum wage had somehow made him question everything he'd built his life on. That evening, curiosity got the better of him. He did something he'd never done before. Entered the servants' quarters during off hours. The hallway was narrow, dimly lit, with doors close together. He could hear televisions playing, someone cooking dinner, muffled phone conversations. He found Amara's room and knocked softly. When she opened the door, her eyes widened in shock. "Mr. Hale? Is something wrong?" "No, He paused, realizing he had no good reason for being there. Then his eyes moved past her into the room, and he forgot what he was going to say. The room was tiny, barely larger than his walk-in closet. A single bed pushed against one wall, a small dresser with a cracked mirror, one chair. But what struck him were the personal touches. Photos covering one wall. Her family, he assumed. The mother who looked like an older version of Amara. The brother in his university sweatshirt. Certificates of appreciation from various volunteer organizations. A child drawing signed, "Love, Lucy," pinned to a corkboard. And on the small nightstand, a notebook. Even from the doorway, he could see it was a list. Names with dollar amounts next to them. People she wanted to help, he realized. Dreams she couldn't afford. "Sir, should I come to your study?" Amara asked, clearly uncomfortable with him seeing her space. "No, I wanted to apologize." "For what?" "For the test. For the card. For putting you in this position. The staff, they're treating you poorly because of what I did." Amara's expression softened slightly. "You didn't make them act this way, sir. People show you who they are when they think they can get away with it. Aren't you angry?" "At who?" "Them for being petty? You for being curious about human nature? The world for being unfair." She shrugged. "Anger takes energy I don't have, Mr. Hale. I need that energy for more important things." Victor looked again at the photos on her wall. "Your mother, how is she?" "Managing. The new medications are helping, the ones we can afford anyway. The salary increase should help with that. I'm sending most of it home, yes." "Thank you for that, truly." There was an awkward pause. Victor, who commanded boardrooms and negotiated billion-dollar deals, didn't know how to have a simple conversation with this woman. "That notebook," he said, gesturing to her nightstand. "Is that?" "Just dreams, sir. People I'd help if I could. Things I'd change if I had the power." "May I?" She hesitated, then handed him the notebook. He read through the list, each entry dated, some going back years. Jerome, full tuition payment, Mama, experimental treatment in Houston, Mrs. Washington from church, wheelchair ramp, community center, new roof, shelter, winter coats for everyone. The list went on for pages. None of it was for her. No vacations, no luxuries, no personal dreams. Just other people's needs she wished she could meet. "This Mrs. Washington," Victor asked. "Who is she?" "An elderly lady from our church. She can barely leave her house because of the stairs, but she can't afford a ramp." "How much would it cost?" "About $3,000 for a proper one. I've been saving, but every time I get close, something else comes up." Victor pulled out his checkbook, wrote a check for $3,000, and handed it to her. "Mr. Hale, I can't. It's not for you. It's for Mrs. Washington. Consider it. Passing on kindness." Amara stared at the check, tears forming in her eyes. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I'm trying to understand something I think I lost a long time ago." Meanwhile, Gregory was not idle. He'd been watching Victor's strange behavior, noting his visits to the servants' quarters, his distraction during meetings. Gregory had worked too hard to maintain his position as head butler to let some maid upset the hierarchy. He began going through Amara's things when she was working, searching for something, anything he could use against her. In her dresser drawer, under carefully folded clothes, he found an envelope. Inside were receipts, not shopping receipts, but payment notices. Overdue rent, final notices for utilities, medical bills marked urgent. "Perfect," he whispered. The next morning, Gregory made his move. He approached Victor in his study, laying the envelope on the desk with theatrical concern. "Sir, I felt you should see this. I found these in Amara's room." You went through her personal belongings? Victor's voice was dangerously quiet. I was concerned for your security, sir. And look, she's deeply in debt. Desperate. Don't you see? She's been playing you, acting generous with your money while she's drowning in her own bills. It's all a performance to get you to bail her out. Victor looked at the bills, then at Gregory. And what did you buy with my car, Gregory? A watch, sir. But that's different. Ow! I wasn't pretending to be something I'm not. I was honest about wanting something for myself. Honest. Victor stood, walking to his window. You think selfishness is honesty and selflessness is performance. That says more about you than her, doesn't it? Sir, I'm trying to protect you. From what? From seeing that someone can be genuinely good despite having every reason not to be? From realizing that I've surrounded myself with people like you, who can't imagine kindness without an agenda. Gregory's face flushed. I've served you loyally for 15 years. Yes, for a salary. For benefits. For the prestige of working in my household. All transactions, Gregory. When have you ever done something for nothing? When have you ever helped someone who couldn't help you back? Gregory had no answer. Get out, Victor said quietly. And if I find out you've been in Amara's room again, you'll be looking for new employment. After Gregory left, Victor sat with the bills. Amara owed nearly $10,000 in various debts. She could have paid them all with one swipe of his card. Instead, she paid strangers' bills while her own life crumbled. That evening, Victor made several phone calls. By morning, all of Amara's debts will be mysteriously paid by anonymous benefactors or accounting errors in her favor. She'd never know it was him. But even as he arranged it, Victor knew it wasn't enough. Money wasn't the lesson here. The lesson was something deeper, something that was cracking the careful walls he'd built around his heart. He thought about his daughter, Elizabeth, whom he hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Their last conversation had been about money, of course. She'd wanted him to stop trying to buy her forgiveness for years of absence. Wanted him to just be a father, not a checkbook. I don't need your money, Dad, she'd said. I need you to care about something besides your empire. He'd accused her of being ungrateful. She'd accused him of being heartless. They hadn't spoken since. Now, watching Amara help Lucy with homework through his window, seeing her patience and genuine care for a child that wasn't even hers, Victor understood what Elizabeth had meant. The empire he'd built was crumbling, not financially, but personally. The test he designed had backfired spectacularly. He wanted to prove everyone was as cynical as he was. Instead, one woman's genuine kindness was exposing the hollow core of his entire life. That night, Victor found Elizabeth's number in his phone. He stared at it for an hour before finally typing a text. I've been wrong about everything. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know. He deleted it, typed it again, deleted it again. How did you apologize for a lifetime of transactional relationships? How did you admit that a maid making minimum wage understood love better than a billionaire ever had? Finally, he just typed, I miss you. His finger hovered over send for a long moment. Then he thought of Amara giving away $70,000 while facing eviction and pressed send. The crack in his heart widened a little more. 3 days after Victor sent the text to his daughter, Amara received the phone call that changed everything. She was polishing silver in the dining room when her phone buzzed. The number was from Houston, from the medical center where her mother had gone for a consultation months ago. Miss Johnson, this is Dr. Richards from Houston Medical. I'm calling about your mother, Clara Johnson. Amara's hands stilled on the serving tray. Is she okay? She's stable, but her condition has progressed faster than we anticipated. The lupus is affecting her kidneys now. She needs surgery, and she needs it soon. How soon? Within the month, ideally. The longer we wait, the more risky it becomes. And the cost. There was a pause. With her insurance, you're looking at approximately $40,000 out of pocket. I know that's substantial, but I understand. Thank you for calling, Dr. Richards. Amara ended the call and sat down heavily in one of the dining room chairs, something she'd never done before during work hours. $40,000. It might as well have been $40 million. She thought about the black card, still in Mr. Hale's possession now, but remembered the feeling of it in her hand. One swipe. That's all it would have taken. One swipe and her mother would be safe. You okay? Amara looked up to find Susan standing in the doorway, concern on her face. My mother, Amara said quietly. She needs surgery. Susan's face softened. Oh, honey, is it serious? Everything with lupus is serious. And expensive. Maybe Mr. Hale would. No, Amara said firmly, standing up. I won't ask him for money. I won't be what Gregory thinks I am. That evening, Amara did something she'd sworn she'd never do. She called Jerome and told him the truth about their situation. I could drop out, Jerome said immediately. Get a job. Help with Mom's surgery. Absolutely not. You have 1 semester left. 1 semester, Jerome. My degree won't mean anything if we lose Mom. We're not going to lose her. I'll figure something out. Amara, stop trying to carry everything yourself. I'm 22, not 12. Let me help. You are helping. By finishing school. By becoming the engineer you've worked so hard to be. That's how you help. After the call, Amara sat in her small room, looking at the photos on her wall. Her mother at Jerome's high school graduation, proud despite being in a wheelchair that day. Her father, before the cancer took him, wearing his janitor's uniform with dignity. They'd taught her to work hard, to be honest, to help others when you could. But they'd never taught her how to ask for help herself. Meanwhile, Victor was dealing with his own family crisis. Elizabeth had responded to his text, but not how he'd hoped. Missing me doesn't erase years of absence, Dad. What do you really want? He'd typed and deleted a dozen responses before finally writing, to apologize. In person, if you'll let me. I'm in Boston, working at a free clinic. A free clinic? Victor had been surprised. With her trust fund, Elizabeth never needed to work at all, let alone at a free clinic. Yes, Dad, a free clinic, where we treat people who can't afford health care. You know, the people who actually need help. The pointed criticism wasn't lost on him. I'd like to visit, see your work. Why? So you can throw money at it and feel better about yourself? No, so I can understand my daughter better. There had been a long pause before her next text. Fine. Thursday, 2 p.m. Boston Community Health Center. Don't bring your entourage. Now, it was Wednesday night, and Victor found himself nervous about seeing Elizabeth. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been nervous about anything. But the thought of facing his daughter, of seeing the disappointment in her eyes, made his chest tight. He walked through the mansion, unable to settle. In the kitchen, he found Amara preparing a late dinner for the staff who worked evening shifts. She moved efficiently, but he could see the weight on her shoulders, the worry in the set of her jaw. Amara. She jumped slightly. Mr. Hale, I didn't hear you come in. Would you like something to eat? No. I wanted to ask how your mother is doing. Her hands paused in their work. She's managing, sir. That's not what I asked. Amara turned to face him. She needs surgery. Soon. But we'll figure it out. We always do. The cost. It doesn't matter. We'll find a way. Amara, if you need. Please, Mr. Hale. Don't. Her voice was firm, but not unkind. I know you mean well, but I can't be the maid who took money from her employer for personal matters. Gregory already thinks I'm manipulating you. Others would agree. I need this job, and I need my dignity. Please don't make me choose between them. Victor wanted to argue, to tell her that dignity didn't pay medical bills, but he saw the pride in her eyes, the same pride he'd once had before money made everything easy and meaningless. I understand, he said quietly. But he didn't, not really. That night, he made more phone calls. The surgery would be covered by an anonymous medical grant that Amara's mother would miraculously qualify for. It was becoming a pattern, him secretly solving her problems while she steadfastly refused to ask for help. The next day, Victor flew to Boston alone, as Elizabeth had requested. The clinic was in a rough part of the city, the kind of neighborhood his driver would normally avoid. But he'd driven himself, parked his rental car between a rusted van and a beaten pickup truck. The clinic's waiting room was packed. Families with children, elderly people with walkers, young adults looking exhausted and sick. The chairs were mismatched, the paint was peeling, but there was something warm about the place, something alive. Can I help you? The receptionist asked, looking at his expensive suit with suspicion. I'm here to see Dr. Elizabeth Hale. Are you a patient? I'm her father. The receptionist's eyes widened. Oh. She mentioned you might come. She's with a patient, but she'll be out soon. Victor sat in one of the plastic chairs, feeling out of place but oddly comfortable. A little boy with a bandaged hand sat next to him, staring with open curiosity. "Are you sick?" the boy asked. "No. Are you?" "I cut my hand on a fence. Dr. Lizzie fixed it. She's nice. She gave me a lollipop." Dr. Lizzie, his daughter, who he tried to mold into a corporate shark, was Dr. Lizzie who gave out lollipops. "Dad." He looked up to see Elizabeth standing there in a white coat, stethoscope around her neck. She looked older than when he'd last seen her, more serious but also more sure of herself. "Elizabeth, come on, I'll show you around." She led him through the clinic, introducing him to staff and patients simply as "my father," not mentioning his name or wealth. She showed him examination rooms held together with duct tape and determination, a pharmacy that ran on donations, a children's play area with toys from yard sales. "This is what I do, Dad," she said finally, leading him to her small office. "This is what matters to me. I can see that. It's impressive. I don't want your money for it." I didn't offer any. She studied him suspiciously. "That's new. I'm trying to learn that not everything is about money." Since when? Victor thought about Amara, about her notebook full of people she wanted to help, about the $70,000 spent on strangers. Since recently, someone taught me that kindness isn't a loan, it's a gift. Elizabeth's expression softened slightly. "Who taught you that?" "Someone unexpected." He paused. "Elizabeth, I'm sorry. For everything. For choosing board meetings over birthday parties. For thinking money could replace presents. For being a father in name, but not in practice." "Dad, please let me finish. I built an empire but lost my family. I have everything and nothing at the same time. You tried to tell me, but I wasn't ready to hear it. I'm hearing it now." Elizabeth was quiet for a moment. "What changed?" "I met someone who has nothing but gives everything. It made me realize I have everything but give nothing." "This someone, is it romantic?" "No," Victor said quickly, then paused. "I don't know. It's complicated. She works for me." "An employee?" "Dad, that's... She's a maid, and she's taught me more about wealth than any board member ever has." Elizabeth stared at him. "A maid. You're having an existential crisis because of a maid." "Her name is Amara. And yes, I suppose I am." For the first time in 3 years, Elizabeth smiled at him. "I want to meet her." She'd probably refuse. She won't even let me help with her mother's medical bills. Smart woman. Help creates obligation. Obligation creates resentment. Or gratitude. In your world, Dad, it's usually resentment. Victor returned from Boston feeling both lighter and heavier. Lighter because Elizabeth had agreed to have dinner with him next month to try to rebuild what they'd lost. Heavier because he could see now how much damage his worldview had caused, how many relationships had been poisoned by his transactional approach to life. The estate felt different when he returned. There was a tension in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. He found out why during the emergency staff meeting Gregory had called in the main hall. "Ladies and gentlemen," Gregory announced, standing at the front of the room like a prosecutor, "I've discovered something disturbing about one of our colleagues." Amara stood near the back, her face carefully neutral, but Victor could see her hands trembling slightly. Gregory produced a folder with theatrical flair. "I have here evidence that Amara Johnson has been stealing from Mr. Hale." The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Victor, watching from the upper landing, felt his blood turn to ice. "That's a lot," Susan protested. "Is it?" Gregory opened the folder. "I have receipts here showing that Ms. Johnson spent over $90,000 on Mr. Hale's card. 90,000, but the purchases that were reported only account for 70,000. Where did the other 20,000 go?" "Those receipts are fake," Amara said quietly, but her voice was steady. "I spent exactly $73,437. Every penny is accounted for. Then you won't mind if we do a full audit?" Gregory's smile was vicious. "Check your bank accounts, your family's accounts." "Gregory, that's enough." Robert, the groundskeeper, interjected. "This is harassment. It's due diligence. Mr. Hale trusted us with unlimited funds. We have a responsibility to ensure that trust wasn't violated. You bought a Rolex. Susan shot back. How? Is that not violating trust? I was honest about it. I didn't pretend to be charitable while secretly enriching myself. Victor had heard enough. He descended the stairs, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Mr. Hale, Gregory said smoothly, I heard what you were doing, Gregory. Victor's voice was dangerously quiet. Show me these receipts. Gregory handed over the folder eagerly. Victor examined them, his expression unreadable. Then he looked at Amara. Did you steal from me? No, sir. Did you spend money on yourself or your family? No, sir. Gregory, Victor turned to the butler. Where did you get these receipts? I compiled them from various sources. You mean you forged them? Sir, Jonathan, Victor called to his aide, who appeared immediately. Please conduct a full audit of all credit card usage for my test. Every single purchase, every single receipt. Start with Gregory's. Gregory's face paled. Sir, that's not necessary. Oh, but it is. You see, Gregory, I've already been monitoring all the purchases. I know exactly what everyone bought and for how much. So if there are any discrepancies, any hidden purchases, any creativity with expense reports, I'll know. The room was dead silent. Victor could see the fear in Gregory's eyes, could see him calculating, trying to figure out what Victor knew. For instance, Victor continued, I know that you didn't just buy a Rolex, Gregory. You also transferred $10,000 to an offshore account. You thought you were clever, routing it through a luxury goods purchase and then canceling the order. But digital footprints are hard to erase completely. Gregory's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. You accused Amara of stealing $20,000 that don't exist, while you actually stole $10,000 that do. I can explain. No need. You're fired. You have 1 hour to pack your things and leave. Jonathan will escort you. 15 years. Gregory exploded. I've given you 15 years of my life, and you were paid well for every one of them. That wasn't enough. She changed you. Gregory pointed at Amara. This is all her fault. You were fine with how things were until she came along with her fake humility and her calculated kindness. The only thing calculated here was your attempt to frame an innocent woman because you couldn't stand that she made you look selfish by comparison. Security arrived to escort Gregory out. He left screaming about lawsuits and revenge, but Victor was already turning to address the remaining staff. Let me be clear, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. Amara Johnson spent $73,000 of my money on medical supplies, hospital bills for strangers, and equipment for a community center. She could have paid off her own mother's medical bills, her brother's tuition, her overdue rent. She did none of those things. He paused, looking at each face in turn. She showed more integrity with unlimited funds than most of you showed with your regular paychecks. Anyone who has a problem with her has a problem with me. Is that understood? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Some looked ashamed, others relieved, a few still skeptical. Dismissed, Victor said. As the staff dispersed, Amara approached him. Mr. Hale, you didn't have to. Yes, I did. He attacked you because of my test. That makes it my responsibility. He was scared. People do terrible things when they're scared. You're defending him? After what he just tried to do to you? I'm not defending his actions. But I understand his fear. He saw his position threatened and lashed out. It's human. Victor stared at her. How do you do that? How do you find compassion for someone who just tried to destroy you? Because holding on to anger would only hurt me, not him. My grandmother used to say that resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. That evening, Victor found himself in his study, staring at the computer screen showing all the credit card transactions from his test. Marcus had spent $30,000 on himself. David had spent $25,000. Susan, one of the kinder ones, had still spent $15,000 on personal luxuries. And Amara had spent nothing on herself. Nothing. His phone rang. It was Elizabeth. Dad, I've been thinking about what you said, about this Amara person, and I want to meet her. If she's really changed you this much, I need to meet the miracle worker. I told you she'd never agree to. Don't tell her who I am. Just say I'm a friend visiting from Boston. I'll come down this weekend. Elizabeth, I don't think. Dad, you want to rebuild our relationship? This is part of it. I need to see who you're becoming. And apparently, she's the catalyst. After the call, Victor walked to his window, looking out at the servants' quarters. A light was on in Amara's room. He wondered what she was doing, reading one of her library books, writing in her notebook of people to help, calling her sick mother to lie about everything being fine. His phone buzzed with a text from Jonathan. Sir, the anonymous medical grant for Mrs. Johnson's surgery has been approved. She'll be notified tomorrow. Victor smiled slightly. At least he could fix that one thing, even if Amara never knew. But as he stood there, he realized something. He didn't want to fix things from the shadows anymore. He didn't want to be the anonymous benefactor, the invisible hand. For the first time in decades, he wanted to be present, to be known, to be vulnerable. He thought about Gregory's words, "She changed you," as if that was an accusation, a crime. But Gregory was right. Amara had changed him. She'd shown him that wealth wasn't what you had, but what you gave. That integrity wasn't about being watched, but about what you did when no one was looking. That kindness wasn't weakness, but the ultimate strength. The next morning brought unexpected news. Amara's mother had called her, crying with joy. She'd been approved for a medical grant that would cover her entire surgery. It's a miracle, her mother kept saying. An absolute miracle. Amara was suspicious. The timing was too convenient, the coverage too complete. She suspected Mr. Hale's involvement, but when she carefully probed, he showed no sign of knowledge about it. "That's wonderful news," he said when she mentioned it. "Your mother must be relieved." "She is. We all are. It just seems unlikely. Good things do happen sometimes, Amara. Maybe it's karma, rewarding you for all the good you've done." She studied his face, but Victor had spent decades perfecting his poker face in boardrooms. He gave nothing away. That afternoon, while Amara was working, Victor met with his lawyer. "I want to set up a foundation," he said. "A proper one, not a tax shelter. Something that actually helps people." "Of course, sir. What kind of foundation?" "Medical debt forgiveness, community support, educational access, the kind of things that actually change lives. An initial endowment? 100 million to start." The lawyer's eyebrows rose. "That's substantial. It's a start. I want Amara Johnson as co-director. The Maid. She's more qualified than any MBA I know. She understands need in a way they never could. Sir, with all due respect, putting a Maid in charge of $100 million foundation will be the smartest thing I've ever done. Draw up the papers." As the lawyer left, Victor felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Anticipation. Not for a business deal or a profitable quarter, but for the look on Amara's face when he told her she could help everyone on her list, and thousands more besides. But first, he had to convince her to accept it. And knowing Amara, that would be the hardest negotiation of his life. The weekend arrived with unseasonable warmth, making the estate gardens bloom as if nature itself was celebrating the changes happening within the mansion's walls. Elizabeth had arrived the night before, staying in the main house as Victor's friend from Boston, though several staff members had noticed the family resemblance. "She has your eyes," Susan had mentioned while serving breakfast, causing Victor to nearly choke on his coffee. Now, Victor watched from his study as Elizabeth wandered the grounds, eventually finding her way to where Amara was teaching Lucy basic gardening behind the groundskeeper's cottage. "The tomatoes need support as they grow," Amara was explaining, helping Lucy tie a young plant to a stake. "Just like people sometimes. Is that why you help everyone?" Lucy asked with the directness only children possess. "I help because it's what we're supposed to do. Look," Amara pointed to how the plants were arranged. "The tall ones provide shade for the delicate ones. The marigolds keep pests away from the vegetables. Everything in a garden helps everything else. Like a family?" "Exactly like a family." Elizabeth approached, and Victor could see Amara straighten, immediately shifting into employee mode. "Can I help you, miss?" "I'm Elizabeth, a friend of Mr. Hale's. You must be Amara. He's told me about you." Amara's face showed surprise and slight worry. "Only good things, I hope. The best things, actually. Mind if I help? I haven't gardened since I was Lucy's age." For the next hour, Victor watched the three of them work together. His daughter, the maid who'd changed his life, and a groundskeeper's child. Elizabeth's designer clothes got dirty. Amara gradually relaxed, and Lucy chattered happily about her improved grades thanks to Amara's tutoring. You know, Elizabeth said, wiping sweat from her forehead, my father says you spent that credit card money on strangers instead of yourself. People needed help, Amara said simply. But you need help too. He told me about your mother, your brother's tuition. Those are my responsibilities. The card wasn't meant for that. How do you know what was meant for? Amara paused, considering. I guess I don't. But using it for myself would have felt wrong, even if it meant your mother's health. Especially then. How could I look at myself knowing I'd taken advantage of someone's test, their trust? Elizabeth glanced toward the study window where she knew her father was watching. What if it wasn't a test? What if it was just a gift? Mr. Hale doesn't give gifts. Everything is a transaction with him. Amara said it without judgment, just stating a fact. People can change, Elizabeth said softly. That evening, Victor called a mandatory meeting for all staff. The main hall was packed, with everyone from the senior staff to the newest gardening assistants present. The absence of Gregory was notable, his usual spot by the door conspicuously empty. I've gathered you all here for an announcement, Victor began, his voice carrying clearly through the room. I've spent the last weeks observing how each of you handled my test with the credit cards. Some of you showed greed. Some showed fear. Some showed creativity in your self-interest. He paused, his eyes finding Amara in the crowd. One of you showed something else entirely. Something that forced me to re-examine not just this test, but my entire life philosophy. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Amara seemed to shrink, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. Effective immediately, I'm ending all future tests of loyalty. I'm tired of games, tired of manipulation, tired of treating human relationships like business transactions. The shock in the room was palpable. Marcus dropped the towel he'd been holding. Susan gasped audibly. Furthermore, Victor continued, I'm establishing the Hale Foundation for Community Support. It will focus on medical debt forgiveness, educational access, and community development. The initial endowment will be $100 million. The room erupted in whispers and exclamations. Victor raised his hand for silence. The foundation will be co-directed by someone who understands need, who knows what it means to struggle, who has shown incredible integrity and compassion. Amara Johnson, would you please come forward? Amara's face went pale. She shook her head slightly, but Susan and Robert gently pushed her forward. She walked to the front as if in a dream. Amara, Victor said, loud enough for everyone to hear, you spent $73,000 of my money on complete strangers while your own family struggled. You showed me that wealth isn't what we accumulate, but what we distribute. You taught me that kindness isn't weakness, but strength. Mr. Hale, I can't. You can, and you will. The foundation needs someone who understands real need, not theoretical poverty discussed in boardrooms. You'll have full authority to help people, real people, the way you've always wanted to. But I'm just a maid. No, Victor said firmly. You're someone who sees suffering and acts. You're someone who gives when you have nothing. You're someone who maintains integrity when no one is watching. Those qualifications matter more than any degree. Elizabeth stepped forward from the crowd. He's right. And if it helps, I'll be serving as the foundation's medical advisor. Pro bono. Amara looked between them, understanding dawning. You're his daughter, the one he's been estranged from. We're working on that, Elizabeth said, glancing at her father with a small smile. Thanks to you, apparently. I need to sit down, Amara said weakly. Victor guided her to a chair, kneeling beside her, an action that stunned the watching staff. Victor Hale didn't kneel for anyone. I know this is overwhelming, he said quietly, though his voice still carried. But think about your notebook. All those people you wanted to help. Now you can. Not just them, but thousands more. What? Amara asked, tears streaming down her face. Why are you doing this? Because you reminded me that I used to be human. Before the money, before the power, I cared about things besides profit margins. You brought that back. This is too much. It's not enough. Not nearly enough to balance the scales of what I've taken from the world versus what I've given. But it's a start. He stood, addressing the room again. There will be changes in this household. Wages will be increased across the board. Working conditions will be improved. The servants' quarters will be renovated. And anyone who has a problem with Amara's new position is free to seek employment elsewhere. What about my position here? Amara asked. You'll maintain quarters here if you wish, but your maid duties are finished. You'll need to focus on the foundation. The salary is $200,000 a year. Amara made a choking sound. 200? That's impossible. It's below market rate for a foundation director, actually, but we can negotiate up if you prefer. I think she's going to faint, Susan said, fanning Amara with her apron. One more thing, Victor said. Your mother's surgery has been scheduled for next week at Houston's best facility. All expenses covered by the Foundation's Medical Assistance Program. Its first official act. Amara did sway then, caught by Elizabeth and Susan together. You knew, she whispered. You arranged the grant. I arranged nothing. The Foundation's board, which currently consists of Elizabeth and myself, voted unanimously to cover it. I can't accept all this. Yes, you can, Elizabeth said firmly. Because it's not charity, it's recognition. It's my father finally understanding that value isn't measured in dollars, but in impact. 6 months later, the Hale Foundation's first major event was in full swing. The ballroom that had once hosted elite galas for billionaires now welcomed teachers, nurses, social workers, and community organizers. Where champagne and caviar once reigned, there was barbecue and lemonade, kids running between tables, and genuine laughter that didn't need alcohol to fuel it. Victor stood at the edge of the room, watching Amara work the crowd. She wore a simple blue dress. She'd refused anything designer, but commanded the room with quiet authority. She was explaining the Foundation's new literacy program to a group of educators, her passion evident in every gesture. She's something, isn't she? Elizabeth appeared at his elbow, holding 2 cups of punch. She saved me, Victor said simply. No, Dad. She showed you how to save yourself. Across the room, Jerome was talking animatedly with some of the Foundation's scholarship recipients. He'd graduated with honors, already fielding job offers, but had chosen to work for the Foundation's education initiative. Their mother, Clara, sat nearby in her wheelchair. The surgery had been successful, though recovery was ongoing. She was laughing at something Lucy had said, the little girl who'd become an unofficial Foundation mascot. Mr. Hale? Victor turned to find Mrs. Washington, the elderly woman from Amara's church who'd needed the wheelchair ramp. She was walking slowly but steadily with cane. Mrs. Washington, how's the new ramp working out? Like a miracle. But that's not why I wanted to talk to you. She fixed him with sharp eyes. That girl changed you. Yes, she did. Question is, what are you going to do about it? I'm not sure what you mean. Mrs. Washington snorted. Boy, I may be old, but I'm not blind. You look at her like she hung the moon, and she looks at you when she thinks nobody's watching. You two are dancing around something that everybody else can see plain as day. Before Victor could respond, she patted his arm and moved on, leaving him standing there with his mouth open. The evening progressed with presentations about the Foundation's work. In 6 months, they'd forgiven over $10 million in medical debt, provided school supplies for 5,000 children, and funded 20 small businesses in underserved communities. But the highlight was when Amara took the stage. 6 months ago, she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. I was a maid living paycheck to paycheck, watching people I love suffer because I couldn't help them. Today, we've helped over 15,000 families. Not because I'm special, but because one man decided to stop testing people and start trusting them. She looked directly at Victor. Mr. Hale likes to say I changed him, but the truth is he changed himself. He just needed someone to remind him who he used to be. Before the money, before the walls, when he was just a person who wanted to make a difference. Victor felt his throat tighten. Elizabeth squeezed his arm. The Foundation isn't about charity, Amara continued. It's about recognizing that we're all connected, that someone else's suffering diminishes us all. That kindness isn't a loan to be repaid, but a gift to be passed forward. The applause was thunderous. Victor watched as people surrounded Amara. People whose lives she'd touched, whose children she'd helped, whose medical bills she'd erased. She handled it all with grace, but he could see her getting overwhelmed. He moved through the crowd, reaching her side. "Need a rescue?" "Please," she whispered. He guided her to the garden, where the noise of the party faded to a distant hum. They walked in comfortable silence to the bench where she used to eat her lunch alone. "It's too much sometimes," she said. "All these people looking at me like I'm some kind of saint. I'm just someone who got lucky." "Lucky?" Victor laughed. "You were facing eviction, your mother was dying, your brother might have had to drop out of school. How is that lucky?" "I was lucky because you chose me for your test. Lucky because you had a conscience that could still be reached. Lucky because your daughter came back at just the right time. Luck had nothing to do with it. You earned everything through your choices, your character." They sat on the bench, the same one where she used to eat lunch alone. The moon was full, casting silver light over the gardens. "Can I tell you something?" Amara asked. "Anything." "That first day, when you gave out the cards, I was terrified. Not of the test, but of you. You seemed so cold, so calculating. Like you were dissecting us all for sport." "I was. But then I saw you watching Lucy and me do homework. There was something in your eyes, like you were remembering something painful but precious. I was remembering teaching Elizabeth multiplication tables. Before I decided making millions was more important than making memories." Amara turned to face him fully. "You're not that man anymore." "No," Victor agreed. "I'm not. But I'm not sure who I am now either. You're someone who admitted his mistakes, who reconciled with his daughter, who gave away $100 million to help strangers, who kneeled in front of his entire staff to ask a maid to help him change the world. When you put it like that, I sound almost heroic. You are, in your own complicated way." They sat in silence for a moment, the party noise drifting over the garden walls. "Amara," Victor began, then stopped. "Start again. These past 6 months, working beside you, watching you transform the foundation into something beautiful, it's been the best time of my life. Mine too. I need to tell you something. Something that might change everything." Amara tensed. "What?" "I'm in love with you." The words hung in the air between them. Amara's eyes widened. "I know it's inappropriate," Victor rushed on. "I'm your employer, was your employer. I'm older, I'm complicated, I'm still learning how to be human again. But watching you these months, seeing your kindness, your strength, your absolute refusal to be anything but yourself, I fell in love. Completely. Irrevocably." "Victor." It was the first time she'd used his first name. "You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. The foundation is yours regardless. Your position, your salary, everything. This doesn't change." She kissed him. Soft, tentative, but unmistakably real. When they pulled apart, she was crying. "I thought I was imagining it," she whispered. "The way you looked at me, the way you changed everything for me. I thought it was gratitude or guilt or... It was love. Is love. Will always be love. But people will say, let them say whatever they want. I spent 50 years caring about opinions, cultivating image, managing perception. I'm done with that. The only opinion that matters to me is yours. My opinion is that you're crazy. Wonderful, but crazy. Crazy enough to give away my fortune. You're not giving it all away. Actually," Victor pulled out a document from his jacket. "I am. Or rather, we are." Amara read the papers, her eyes widening. "This transfers 90% of your wealth to the foundation, leaving me with merely a few $100 million. We'll have to struggle by somehow." "Victor, this is insane." "No, it's sanity. For the first time in decades, I'm sane. I don't need billions. Nobody does. What I need is purpose, connection, the ability to look at myself in the mirror without disgust. And what about us? If this is real, then we do what you taught me. We take it one day at a time, helping people, building something meaningful. Together, if you'll have me." Elizabeth appeared at the garden entrance. "Sorry to interrupt, but the mayor wants to speak with you both about the city partnership program." She looked between them, taking in their joined hands Amara's tears, her father's expression of vulnerable hope. "Finally," she said, "Mrs. Washington owes me $20. She bet it would take another month." "You were betting on us?" Victor asked, incredulous. "Dad, the entire staff was betting on you. The only question was when, not if." As they walked back to the party together, Victor, Amara, and Elizabeth, the Foundation's logo caught the light. It was simple. Two hands, one giving, one receiving, forming a circle. "I love it," someone said, pointing to the logo. "It shows how giving and receiving are connected." "Actually," Amara said softly, "it shows how they're the same thing. When you give from a heart, you receive something back. Not as payment, but as grace." Victor squeezed her hand. 6 months ago, he'd given out credit cards to test people's greed. One woman had spent the money on strangers, and in doing so, had saved him from himself. The party continued late into the night. Former patients whose debts had been forgiven shared their stories. Children showed off their new school supplies. Small business owners talked about their dreams made real. And at the center of it all stood an unlikely couple, a billionaire who'd learned that wealth meant nothing without love, and a maid who'd taught him that the human heart was the only treasury that mattered. As the evening wound down, Victor found himself at the microphone for closing remarks. 6 months ago, I thought I was testing my staff's loyalty with a simple experiment. I gave them unlimited credit cards to see what they would do. Most bought luxuries for themselves, which was expected and human. But one person, one remarkable woman, spent every penny on strangers in need while her own family struggled. He found Amara's eyes in the crowd. I gave her my card to test her heart. Instead, she gave me hers, and it broke mine in the best way possible. It broke the walls I'd built, the cynicism I'd cultivated, the belief that everyone was as selfish as I'd become. He raised his glass of punch. Tonight, we celebrate not just the Foundation's work, but the proof that kindness is contagious, that generosity multiplies, and that sometimes the smallest acts of compassion can change the world. To Amara Johnson, who reminded me that we measure wealth not by what we keep, but by what we give away. The toast was echoed throughout the room. Amara made her way to the stage, taking the microphone. "Mr. Hale, Victor likes to give me credit for changing him. But change comes from within. All I did was hold up a mirror. He did the hard work of looking into it and deciding he didn't like what he saw. That takes more courage than any donation, any grand gesture." She looked around the room at all the faces, staff members who'd once mocked her, community members she'd helped, her family beaming with pride. The real test was never about the credit cards. It was about whether we could see past our own needs to recognize others' desperation, whether we could choose compassion over comfort, whether we could believe that lifting others up doesn't pull us down but raises us all. She raised her own glass to second chances, to the courage to change, and to the truth that love, whether for a stranger in need or for someone who starts as your employer and becomes your partner, love is the only wealth that matters. As the glasses clinked and the crowd cheered, Victor pulled Amara aside. "Partner?" he asked with a raised eyebrow. "Business partner," she clarified with a smile. "The rest will take one day at a time. I can live with that." And for the first time in his adult life, Victor Hale meant it. He could live with uncertainty, with vulnerability, with the beautiful messiness of real human connection. Because Amara had taught him the most important lesson of all, that the heart's wealth couldn't be measured, only given freely and received with gratitude. The credit card that had started it all sat in a drawer in Victor's desk, retired from use, but kept as a reminder. A reminder that testing others often reveals ourselves, that kindness given freely returns multiplied, and that sometimes the best investment isn't in stocks or bonds, but in the simple, radical act of believing people can be good. The story that began with a billionaire's cynical test ended with a love story. Not just between two unlikely people, but between a man and his rediscovered humanity. And in the end, that was the greatest return on investment Victor Hale had ever seen. If you had unlimited money for just one day, would you fix your own struggles first or help strangers who might be suffering even more than you? Let me know in the comments what you'd honestly do. And if this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful stories that challenge everything we think we know about human nature.